Hi everyone, welcome to Ask an Armourer. My name's Kia and today I'm going to be continuing the process of showing you how to rewire your foil and show you another method that I know to glue down the wire. If you watch my videos on how to do this for epee, it's the exact same process, just with a couple tweaks for 2 wires in epee versus 1 wire in foil. As you know by now, I'm filming this process over several videos so that I can really break down each phase for you, as well as go into some of the pros and cons that I've discovered by using these various techniques. Also, there's no objectively correct method to do this, nor is what I'm showing you comprehensive by any means. What is most important at the end is that you have a functional blade that works within the technical requirements laid out in the FIE manual. So, as with all of my videos on tool recommendations, I will always encourage you to try different things, mix and match things, and just find what works best for you. To start, the parts you're going to need are your clean foil blade, your foil's barrel, your spaghetti wire, and a new wire. The tools you're going to need are your rewiring rig, whether that be the board or chain style. You're going to need a bench-mounted vise or a set of vise grips. You'll need a wrench. You'll need liquid super glue, and if it's available, gel super glue, which makes life a little bit easier. And you'll want your tip setter for foil. Finally, some optional but helpful things are a paper clip and your trusty towel. Before I begin anything, because I'm paranoid, I always like to make sure that the cap size of my wire actually will fit into the opening of my barrel. Because despite being the same type, I'm using German here for reference, errors can occur in the manufacturing process that mean they don't actually fit together as nicely as they should. For example, I've had caps where there's a pronounced plastic nub somewhere, where it was attached to the assembly apparatus, which I had to gently sand down to smooth the cap so it would sit properly. So I find it just easier to insert the cap into the barrel and just make sure that it actually goes down all the way without too much difficulty, and just check that beforehand rather than needing to repeat steps if something didn't work. Once the cap is confirmed to fit in your barrel, if you have a bench vise, go ahead and set your foil up in it with the tip upwards and about 1/2 inch showing above the vice's jaws and the groove towards you. If you don't have a bench vise, just go ahead and lay the foil on the workspace in front of you. Next, very gently unwind your wire. Make sure to be careful not to kink or disturb the insulation on it, as this may break the wire and lead to shorts, which would then mean you have to start all over again. Once your wire is as straightened out as possible, thread just 1 inch or 2 of the end without the cap through the barrel. The wire should enter through the larger part of the barrel and come out the smaller. Then line the wire up with the groove in the foil and tighten the barrel down just by hand for now. I'll pause here for just a couple of notes. One, we're only going to thread a little bit of the wire through at this point so that there's less risk in the next step. If we tighten the barrel fully down and end up pinching or snapping the wire with just this amount, it's not a big deal. There's lots of extra and we can continue to use this wire. However, if we had thread the entire length through so that the cap is actually settled into the barrel before tightening it down, there is a risk of destroying the entire wire. And while this is not the end of the world, it's still frustrating. I have certainly done that a couple of times where I just threaded it all the way down and then broke the wire right at the base of the cap and had to start all over again. As a second note, some people like to use Loctite on the threads of the foil to hold the barrel on. I've never bothered to do this, as I found that if you tighten the barrel properly, it won't give you any issues, and removing a barrel that's been held on with Loctite is just Really annoying. Plus, it's just one more step in an already kind of lengthy process, but there's nothing wrong with doing so if you find it to be more secure. So feel free to try out both and see what you prefer. Getting back to work, once our barrel is held on with just hand tightening, I like to slide the wire back and forth a little bit just to make sure nothing is snagged or pinched at this point. If all is well, I'm going to put a quick bend in the wire so it doesn't inadvertently get pulled out in the next step, and then I'm going to go ahead and tighten the barrel down the rest of the way. For more details on that, you can check out my video on how to tighten a barrel, which I'll link below. Now, at this point, in order to make sure that my wire doesn't get tangled up as I'm tightening the barrel, if I have a bench-mounted vise, I will go ahead and put my foil into it again, or I'll just hold it with the vise grips like this. Regardless, I'll use my non-dominant hand to sort of drape and support the wire so that it's held up and out of the way, and then I'll take my dominant hand and I'll just go ahead and start tightening the barrel down using the wrench. Now that the barrel is fully tightened on, I will once again just double check to make sure my wire can still move. Great, so we haven't pinched anything, and it is time to now thread the rest of the wire through and then settle the cap. So to do this, my preferred method is to actually take the foil out of the bench vise, if you're using one, and place it so the tang is on the ground and therefore supporting the weight of the foil. I'll then hold up the blade with my left hand, again allowing the wire to drape over my hand, so it is basically going into the barrel about as vertically as possible. This is one of those steps where earlier the straighter you were able to get the wire, the better, as this will just make it a much smoother process as we're feeding it through, as if there's no kinks or bends to get hung up. So holding it like this, I'll then take my other hand and just kind of slowly and gently start pulling the wire through, pausing if there's any hang-ups, and just, you don't want to put any real pressure on this because any pressure will likely disturb the insulation and lead to shorts later on. When you get to the cap end, go ahead and grab your tip setter. Then simultaneously push on the cap with the setter while gently pulling on the wire underneath. This will make sure that the cap gets fully settled into the base of the barrel without the wire getting bunched up underneath. Now, as a final check that everything is where it should be, I always grab the spring and the button that I'll be using and just fit them into the barrel. If they sit and depress fully and smoothly, I know I'm set to keep going. If not, you may need to try to back the cap out and reset it, or just push it in a little bit further, or if it's really stuck, you may just have to redo this entire process and find new sets. Once your wire is settled into the barrel, we need to mount the foil into our wiring rig. I'm using a board here as that's my preference, but you can use a chain too. Start with the tip and place that into one end. For those wanting to use a board, it will be the end that was drilled at about a 45-degree angle, and on mine only has one slot. For the chain, they'll be the same anyways. Then, making sure that you're holding both the tip and the end of the rig so that they stay secure, bend the tang end down into the other end of the rig. If you're using a board, it will then just stand up on its own like this, and if you're using a chain, it'll have the same shape, just not be able to stand up on its own and need to be hung up. Now you're ready to begin gluing. Take your board and just lean it up against a wall or a workbench or a couch arm if you're sitting in your living room like I am, and this is how we're going to be adding the glue. So if you have it, start with your gel and just put a dot right about half an inch, a centimeter away from the end. This will serve a couple different purposes. It will not only form an actual anchor point for the wire to strain against rather than it straining against the cap. It will also provide a little bit of a stop in case any of the liquid glue wants to try and backflow into the cap. I once managed to inadvertently add so much liquid glue that it completely covered the cap end, and needless to say, made it so that my foil did not work at all. And I attempted to recover it, but it didn't work. So all of that work I put in was useless, and I just had to start over again. So we really don't want backflow into the gap. Now for the next step, you're going to need your liquid glue. With one hand, grab the top 4 to 6 inches of wire and just put a little bit of tension, making sure you're pulling the wire down into the groove. Take the liquid glue and add a dot just under where the gel glue is if you used it, or about an inch or so away from the end. Capillary forces and gravity will then cause the liquid glue to flow down the channel. You're going to then just keep this process going, moving your hands down a couple inches at a time and adding dots of glue once you stop seeing the liquid glue flowing anymore. You'll be able to tell where the glue has been and where it's not based on the color change on the wire insulation. Go ahead and stop once the glue gets to just a couple inches of where the bell guard end would be, as most of the glue will just keep flowing down and cover the rest of that anyways. As a last touch, you can go through with your paper clip, and if there's anywhere that the glue needs to be connected or is bubbled up a little bit, you can just go and sort of clean it up a little bit to really make sure that everything is glued down. Then, once that's done, take your towel and then just go ahead and wipe off any excess glue. And now, we wait. Go ahead and lean your board up against a wall out of the way, or if you used a chain, hang it somewhere so it's out of the way, and we give it a couple hours to overnight to fully cure. So the benefit of this method is that you have really close control of the tension in the wire. So you can really make sure that nothing gets hung up anywhere or is overly strained. However, the downside of this is if you lose focus or are interrupted at all, the tension can be off. Therefore, if you're not pulling as tightly in one spot versus the other, that can lead more easily to the wire popping out of the groove later on. Also, this is just my personal preference, but I'm not a huge fan of having both my hands occupied while working on this. It makes me feel like I don't have the capacity to catch something if something goes wrong. So, but to each their own. Also, as a quick bonus pros and cons, the board I personally prefer to use just because I find it a lot sturdier and I like that it will hold the blade upright for me. The chain, of course, is much more portable and much more compact, so if you're traveling, it's probably a better choice, as well as I do like you can hang the chain so that the bend of the blade goes down, so you don't have to worry at all about overgluing. Any excess glue will flow into that lowest point and can then easily be removed from there. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe, and as always, if you have any questions, comments, or other topics you'd like me to cover, let me know down below. See you in the next one. Bye.